Welcome to the Bad Boss Brief. I am Stephanie Perillo.
And I'm Eugene S. Robinson.
And we are at episode 80. Nice round number. I like that. And today we are talking about art, artists, and AI.
Yeah.
And a couple
we are talking about art and artists and AI. The show is completely written by humans.
Well, and a couple of things came together to give us this idea. So the first one was, for those of you that listen regularly, I have been asking for people to send in questions and story topics and ideas for the last few episodes, and got a little shirty last time because people were not sending them in. And thank you to those who sent in.
After all, listen, this show is not just for us, it's for you.
Well, and it was great. And we really do appreciate a bunch of you sent in really good ideas for shows and questions and topics, which we will cover in future episodes. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting is a woman sent in something to me. I'm not going to say her name because she was very nicely kind of saying, you can use AI for that. And she sent me the prompt she had written and what AI responded. And which I thought was very sweet. And I know that a lot of people have an idea that because we are, of a certain age, we don't know how to use technology. And I wrote her back and I said, I use AI often in my day job. I'm a consultant. I will often use AI to come up with, say, give me 15 facilitation exercises for a leadership team meeting of people with these circumstances, right? It's, better than Google, and it gives me some useful information. But as I explained to this listener, I never, ever, ever use AI for any creative works that I do, not for my Substack, not for this podcast. Never. I don't use it for ideation. I don't use it for editing. I don't use it for plussing anything up. Never does my work touch AI. And there's a reason for that. But I wanted to start with, do you use AI for your creative work at all?
Not at all. Now, I've used it 2 times. One time, to see what all the hubbub was about, I said, generate Oxbow lyrics for me. Which was the name of my last band. And then the second one wasn't even one that I used. It was a guy who was making a video. I think the name of the video was The Second Talk. It was off of Oxbow's last and apparently final record, and Love's Holiday. And they said they threw a package deal. They filmed a real video in Pennsylvania with real actors and drone shots, and the real director who had won awards and wanted a lot of money. And we kind of complained about the money. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I will throw in an AI video for you for free. So really you're getting 2 videos for, price of 1. And we said, well, we're not paying anymore. We might as well get it. So go ahead and do it. And it was so weirdly disorienting that it really served both the purpose of the song and our needs at the time. And we put it out, and people were outraged. and I said, listen, I pre-announced exactly what it was going to be, like we were told exactly what it was going to be. We're not trying to trick you. This is not obfuscation. This is not deceit or trick. This is just what it is. We gave these images to a computer and said, make a video for this song, or the director did, and this is what they came up with, which I think was an interesting experiment, given that all other 7 songs on the record were actually real videos with real people done by real people. The Oxbow lyrics were laughable. It just repeat like night, there was a fight, everything was right. It was like hardcore lyrics from 1980. And at that point I figured, after hearing Nick Cave complain about it, I figured I got nothing to worry about. There's no, we're involved in art to communicate. That is, I am involved in art to communicate to you, whoever might be listening. And how would it serve my purpose? If I got to the point where I need AI to finish what I'm doing, I've just got to stop doing what I'm doing. It doesn't make any sense. And for the most part, the AI I've seen has been soulless. And you can tell and you can feel it. You don't know what's wrong. Like the first time a friend of mine used Botox this is really weird because all little micro movements that your face makes and all those things were just washed from her face. I go, what's going on? Are you not having a good time? And she goes, no, I had Botox done for the first time and it killed her face. Like AI will kill your prose or your narrative. And also, this is dangerous. This is the part that you most need to pay attention to. The reason why I've had those 2 instances of dealing with AI, because you are helping to train AI by using AI. And I don't want any way my brain works at all to be part of the whole AI calculus. I'm opting out. So,
Well, and I agree with you. And this is what I was explaining to our listener when we were emailing back and forth, is that, I believe there is a soul to my creative work. Like when I was in college, of course, I'm a creative writing student and we're studying Hemingway. And Hemingway talks about every short story being like an iceberg, right? There's the piece above the water that you see, which is the actual words on the page. And then there's everything that happens underneath the water, all of the things that are not spoken of, that are not put down on the page. And I feel like it's the same thing in anything that I write, that there's all of my life experience. There's all of, there's a lot of stuff that is underneath the water. And that what AI is it's a tiny little chip of something floating on top of the water. There's none of that depth. There's none of that. I use the exact same word, soul. And so I do think, and I think also what's interesting is the notion of, like the relationship we have with our listeners. So the reason that I want our listeners to give us ideas for topics or to ask us questions is that there is a depth in that, right? If someone, like I got an email from somebody who was talking about his particular situation and being unemployed. And we're going to cover that in a topic in the future. But the depth of his experience as a person who has been looking for a job was resonant. And I reacted to him as a human being. And my interest in doing that as a topic was in response to his experience. I think it's a man, to his experience. And I feel like, again, that gives a depth and a richness. So I don't want to come to this podcast and show up for the audience with a bunch of prompts that were scraped off the internet somewhere and somebody else's words. We have a relationship. There are people that show up every single time we do an episode, and they listen and they post and they comment. And it's not a huge horde. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands of people, but those hundreds of you that show up, I want to be delivering content that is thoughtful and intentional, that is responsive, that there's that sort of co-creation.
I tell you, when I started, and I've been thinking about this because I'm looking for a photograph for my next Substack. I can't find it, of course. I put it in a safe place, and those safe places are never very safe. But one of the things I found was, of course, me standing in front of my editorial board when I worked at Apple. And I remember when I started at Apple, they said, look, we need to make apple.com a destination site, something that's as cool as the soul of the company that generates it. All right. And I said, so what are we writing about? Products. And I go, in my head, I'm going, oh, geez, this is going to be terrible. We're talking about products. So you can't. And the first person I corralled was, rest in peace, Frank Kozik, the artist. And he used Apple products to make his stuff. And Kozik got choked up during the interview when he was talking about how much his Apple products meant to him, his Mac. And then he had a tangent. He started going on about how evil Microsoft was and about how creatively dead it was. And at the conclusion of this interview, I knew I could do the job because I've never talked that way about a toaster or a flashlight or any other appliance. I've never sobbed over CB radio, but here was a guy, an artist I really respected, who was emotionally moved over this technology. And yet this is the kind of soul that we're looking for. I was completely surprised. And I go, this is at the heart of every story I need to write about how Apple is transforming, the creative landscape. I didn't need AI for that. I don't think AI ever could have come up with that. And AI never would have been able to glean that from an interview. So for my purposes, AI is pointless. The people that I know who are scared of AI, weirdly enough, are lawyers.
Well,
Um,
and you know what's interesting, I want to get back to the lawyer thing, but what's
yep.
interesting too is, you know, there's a lot of I work with a lot of advertising agencies, and so there's a lot
Mhm.
of concern about we're going to be replaced by AI. And I had
Yes.
another experience, which is I am doing some things with my website. I'm moving into more personal coaching, and so I've got a lot of things that I'm working on. And I went to ChatGPT and I said, give me a strategy. And I laid out all the specifics. And ChatGPT generated a very serviceable strategy.
Mhm.
It was serviceable. There were some
Yeah.
useful pieces of information. I was not
Yeah.
inspired. And then I also said to a friend of mine who's starting a new business doing marketing for artists and musicians, Jacqueline, who you know,
Mhm.
I said, can you just take a look? Just take a look. Like, you know, don't
Mhm.
spend a lot of time, kind of high level. And then she gave me her strategy.
Mhm.
It was night and day.
Yeah.
The application of not just knowledge, but taste,
Yes.
awareness, her understanding of the marketplace that comes from
Mhm.
talking to actual human beings
Mhm.
was an order of magnitude better. And it was a really good reminder to me that if you are involved in any sort of creative enterprise, right? I mean, she is doing marketing for musicians, but if you're and other artists and writers, but you have to have taste. You have to have an awareness of your audience. You have to be looking towards what happens next. And
Yes.
AI can only look towards what happens behind. And I
Yeah.
thought to myself, this is another clear example of what it is, where the limitations of AI are. And
Yeah.
also, if you are an artist or a designer, how can you put yourself in that forefront of taste, looking towards the future rather than looking back?
So, my father, we didn't do a lot of speaking to each other during the course of certainly his life. He died a couple of years ago, but he had been an intelligence officer, was a filmmaker, and so he got invited to some event, which he told me was some media, film, computer, sciencey event. It could have been anything. It could have been the military's interest in weaponizing film, but he said this was the first. We're talking the 70s now. So they showed them computer films, films made by computers, and he I said, were they good movies or were they? He goes, I had a headache for 3 days afterward, and he wasn't talking about a figurative headache, like that was a load of crap. I wasted 8 hours watching it. But he meant a literal, it was disorienting, it was dizzying, and he meant that he had literally had a headache for 3 days post facto. So, so I don't, I don't, I'm not so much a Luddite. We're doing this show on computers, but I would just rather stuff made by real people. I'm sure if I put 100 chimps with 100 typewriters, 100 chimps with 100 computers, I'm sure they could generate a lot of good stuff. But I'm not so much interested in communicating with chimps. So, so yeah, I'm fine to have other people use AI if that's going to give them quick time across town. But for myself, no. And moreover, honestly, truthfully, people, I'm a snob about it. If you're using it, like I'm a snob about auto tune. Why should I care if Anthony Kiedis is suddenly on tune because he's using auto tune? Why should that bother? Well, because he can't sing. So, oh, you're saying that if you can't sing, you shouldn't sing? I said, no, you should sing. That's what you should do. You should sing. Using some technology to kind of, make your voice, make it make sense, not a computer. But this is going to be a losing battle, I'm quite sure.
But what's interesting is that, you know, I'll see these things on social media where there will be these kind of breathless clips of,
Yes.
look, listen to these people sing without auto tune. Like,
Yeah.
listen to Whitney Houston. Oh my God. And of
Yeah.
course, we grew up before auto tune. So listening to Whitney Houston or any other great singer, there was an expectation that if I heard someone's
Hmm.
voice, it was
Hmm.
relatively close to their voice. I mean,
Yep.
obviously there's going to be editing in the studio and what have you, but that generally this person singing is this person singing. And I was wondering, is that what we're going to end up with? Is there going to be some future in which, like, oh my God, Eugene Robinson and Stephanie Payrollo actually wrote their own shit?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the thing is, these are decisions that are quite easily made by the consumer.
Right.
And that's when you start to, if you were prone to have hope about something like this, you'd be prone to lose hope, because somebody, like I had a Substack a few weeks ago that discussed authenticity. Somebody said, what do you care? If you like the music, what do you care? And that's right. If you're using music as wallpaper and I hear this bibbity bibbity bop, and it sounds fine, it gets done. Who do I care if it's a fabricated band? They've been fabricated bands forever. The Monkees were not a real band, but I'm sure we can all sing Stepping Stone and Last Train to Clarksville quite easily. So, does it matter? I think making art, narrative, I mean, stuff that's going to exist in that space between you and me is something that, I'm communicating something that's, I believe, to be valuable from me. How could a computer do that? And somebody might say, well, it's just like picking up a phone. I mean, that's an intermediary. That's a medium that you're using and a phone is a tool. It's not a medium. Well, AI is a tool. Yeah, no, it's not. You can use it as a tool. I'm sure people like you admitted to using it as a tool, but that's not how people are using it. And indeed, interesting things can happen. People have taken auto-tune, Lil Wayne and Future and a few of these hip hop cats, and just turned the knobs all the way and just came up with really wild effects that have now become part of the musical canon. They've taken something that was dead and soulless and injected some soul into it. It might happen with ChatGPT, but not now.
Well, there was a great article, another reason that I thought about this last week, by Colson Whitehead, an opinion piece in the New York Times, talking about AI and art as a writer. And here's a quote that I really loved. Quote, some people say, I just use it, AI, to brainstorm ideas. If you don't know what to paint or compose or write, you're in the wrong job. Yep. Art is the business of making up stuff. Go make up some stuff. Unquote. Yep. And one of the things that I notice is I used to have people come up to me and say, and I still happen sometimes with older friends who will be like, I can't believe that you come up with a new Substack every single week, 1,500 words every single week, plus the podcast. And I would preen a bit because, I came up with all of those words out of my own brain. And I'm pretty pleased with myself for that output, in addition to all the other things in my life. Now I feel like there's this kind of like, well, I mean, I guess Stephanie's just really good at using AI. And I'm like, no, I want credit for I look at a blank page every single week and twice a month for the podcast and come up with something. And that matters. That is like a core to my identity. Is there are many challenges of having a brain as busy as mine. Right? And
you know what you need? Okay, go ahead.
No, and so there's challenges of having a brain as busy as mine, but one of the gifts of it is that I can generate a lot of content.
You know what you should do, and I'm not going to do this. I mean, I had one try at that. Go to AI and say, generate prose like Stephanie Pirolo.
I've thought of that, but I want to stay below the parapet of the large language models, right? I don't want and then that's another thing too, is it's like, who owns your words? Because we both know that everything we put out on Substack or in any other venue is scraped by these large language models. It doesn't matter how many times I click privacy, click don't share. It's out there. It's going to happen. So all the things we have written is this Substack. All of these things are out there in the world. And so I recognize that, but I think it begs a larger question about ownership. And I heard another interesting story. A friend of mine is a professional dancer and choreographer. And she's, up and coming, teaches a lot of classes, doing very well. And, which is not nothing for an artist who is a dancer, right? And she got a call from a dance student at a large university near where she lives who said, hey, I'm a dance student. I'm a sophomore or freshman or whatever, young woman. Can I come shadow you for a day? And so my friend said, yeah. So she came to my friend's studio, watched her work. And then the student went home and bought the exact same outfits, the exact same, props and setup, and started to film Instagram videos of herself doing the exact same dances that my friend had choreographed. And so my friend calls her and says, hey, as an artist, you should know that this is not cool.
Yeah.
Like, you have to at least credit me. Choreography by, insert my friend's name here.
Yeah.
And this, and you can understand that up to this point, right? Like, I was expecting
this is intellectual property. Yeah,
right. And I was expecting the story to be that the student, horrified by her mistake, immediately went and took down the videos or credited her. No. You know what this student said? Your choreography feels so natural in my body that it is mine now. And refused to take down the videos or give my friend any kind of credit for her choreography.
Yeah, there's a court for that kind of behavior. We call it the court, street justice.
Well, but I think
take a drink, y'all. Take a drink, because yes, I am suggesting that she have her ass beaten. But look. This happened at one point. A sound guy, he told me the story. Got fired. Like, the band was struggling with the sound during sound check. They've been working on a headlining band, big. We're talking about a stadium, and the guy couldn't do it. And a lot of times in this instance, if you can't hack it, so they said, "Look, you're done. We're going to bring in somebody else. You're finished." And I don't know if you've seen these large multi-channel live sound boards, a lot of sliders and faders on it. And the guy goes, "Oh, okay," and he stands up and he zeroes all the faders. And they're like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "That was my mix. You didn't like my mix. That's why you fired me, and I'm leaving, and I'm taking my mix with me." Yeah, so if she's got videos of her doing this choreography that's been stolen, I would sue the woman in small claims court. $6,000 is the upper limit. She can't come in with a lawyer, and she would have to explain her thievery, because I can go to your house and say, "My God, your fur coat just fits so well on me," and leave with it. I mean, it's thievery, no matter how you look at it. So too bad she could have convinced her of that.
But what was interesting is what we were talking about is the notion of, how does AI, which sucks up everything, all of our words, all of our images, and makes new ones, how does that change the idea of ownership? And I think what came up for me is this young woman, who was presumably 19 or 20 years old, has, spent a lot of years with AI being available and generating content. And somehow her understanding of mine and yours has been blurred, because if I like it, if it feels resonant for me, I get to make it my own. And I do think there's something there.
There's Lawrence Lessig is the one who kind of academic who came to the defense of hip hop in an interesting way, and came up with the fair use doctrine, or was at least part of the fair use doctrine, which is, you can use portions of songs to create a wholly different other piece of artwork without necessarily abridging the copyrights of the artist who generated the original artwork. But that's very different. I mean, I think they even capped it at 30 seconds. I'm assuming the video or whatever she's done is more than 30 seconds. But in that, Kasha is a choreographer, and in that field, it is rampant. And about the only thing that's kept people from doing that is shaming them. That seems to be. But you have to then be willing to spend your time to notify the entire world that you've been stolen from. And against AI, any of us going to end up doing that in the long run? I don't know. I mean, choices. I mean, again, the consumer decides and makes these choices. If you don't care, if The Sound of the Fury by William Faulkner is not good enough for you, so you want to read, Jeremy Spiven's version, go ahead. I mean, in other words, if we can kill 2,000 years of Western culture with a computer, then I guess maybe it should be killed, right? But I still prefer to listen to Pavarotti and not some computer version of it. And there are plenty of people out there who would say, "Are you listen to Pavarotti, right?" Digital is a sample. You're actually not listening to Pavarotti. You're listening to a computer sample of Pavarotti. And I was like, you know what? You know what I mean.
Yeah, but I think also, and you use the idea of a sample, right? Like, if I hear a sample of Nina Simone, one, I know it's Nina Simone. right?
Correct.
It's not Nina
Correct.
Simone distorted in a way that she doesn't sound like Nina
Correct.
Simone. And so I
Correct.
think that there is, when most samples are
Mm.
recognizable and you
Okay.
understand, oh, that was a sample from this piece, right? And
Yeah.
the idea of taking a sample and then shifting it and changing it, it's no longer sampling, right? Then it's reconstituted in some other form. But I think
Yeah.
I want to go to, you started to say something about lawyers using AI. And I want to go back to this notion of people who use AI for research, but then, like take the information and then change it. And Colson Whitehead, again, in his New York Times article says, this is a quote: "Some people say I just use it," again, AI, "for research. It only gets things wrong or hallucinates crazy stuff 30% of the time. I don't need a research assistant that gets things wrong 30% of the time. I can do that myself." Unquote. But
That's great.
I do think that that's interesting, because there was an article, again, in the New York Times, about a case. I won't go into the details of the case, but the lawyer used AI in a really, and AI hallucinated all sorts of crazy stuff, and the judge threw out the claim.
Yeah.
Just threw it out of court. Like, this is a reprehensible use of AI. And it was the first time that kind of a judgment had happened because of AI. People have used it. Lawyers have been told this is false, this is a hallucination, and they're supposed to be responsible about it. But I think it's also recognizing that, like, a lot of the stuff that comes up isn't true. And I have an example of this. I was doing something, I don't remember what it was, but I was trying to remember, like, I know in Godspell there's this particular line, but I didn't want to go listen to the whole album. So I just asked ChatGPT, what song has this line?
Right.
And it came up with the wrong song. And I was like, I don't think that's it. And I went and listened to the song. And then I was like, that's wrong. Tell me which one it is. I did that 7 times. It's like, this is not a long album. Finally, I was like, okay, the time it's taking me to ask ChatGPT to hallucinate, I can listen to the album, which is what I ended up ultimately doing, or doing some sort of internet search of just lyrics. But that is something, and again, that might improve, that might change, but I feel remiss in having a conversation about AI and not mentioning the very real risk of A, hallucination, and B, the environmental impact of the data centers that are being built and that are consuming vast quantities of water and energy and polluting accordingly in order to allow us to make video images of whatever.
Cats dancing.
Yeah, or unfortunately also, at least with Grok, Musk's, pornography featuring people.
That's
a whole nother thing. But I do
AI porn is
But I do think that it is important to recognize that a lot of times it's wrong. And then I think the other thing is, and this is one of the things that I think about a lot, is, I have had friends say to me as, we age, that they're finding that, like, words don't come to them as quickly, or they don't remember things. And I always feel this sort of cold horror rinsing through me. Like, I don't want anything to mess with my brain. And there are studies that show that our cognitive abilities decline the more we use AI.
Yep.
And I like my cognitive abilities. I want to keep them in peak form. And, and I think about the obvious, right? Again, we remember when we had to remember phone numbers. Right? I don't remember phone numbers anymore. And I'm sure that those little patch of neurons in my brain have atrophied because it's all in my phone. Like, I have trouble remembering my husband's phone number. And he is my, person to call if I get in trouble. And I have to remind myself and go over it over and over again, right? Because I can't remember my daughter's and my husband's phone numbers easily off the top of my head. I can remember the phone number, my home phone number from, like when I was a child.
Exactly.
But I can't remember the numbers of my emergency contacts. No. I also think it is the same. With language, and that I don't mind that I never had a good sense of direction anyway. And thank God for GPS, but it has impacted our innate ability to tell direction, to tell time, to understand our orientation in space. is impacted when we completely offload that to a device. And
I
yeah,
can defend because it helps me avoid traffic jams.
no, and again, I have a horrible sense of direction. And so using GPS, great. Those are not parts of my brain that are valuable to me because they were always faulty in the first place. It's like knowing how to spell, right? That's what spell check's for. I'm sorry. But keeping the ability to put words together in a way that is compelling, that connects, that explains something that's been in my mind that someone else may relate to, is a skill I want to hold and hone and keep until I can no longer draw breath.
Well, the thing is, and this is the thing, you enjoy it. And I don't know anybody who's using GPT or any of the others. Now people are having imaginary boyfriends and girlfriends on these things. I don't know. You're not replacing stuff that you like with it, right? So,
I guess that's true. Well,
I will write. I mean, I'm writing regardless of the fact that, James Patterson sells millions and millions of books. That might put a crimp in your style. If you sell 20,000 books, that might be kind of a drag that he sells millions and millions, but it's not stopping me from writing. So,
well, I sell hundreds and hundreds of books. I'm still writing another one.
Right.
So I mean, it's not about that. And then I want to just kind of end with this quote from Colson Whitehead that he ends his piece with. Read the book, not the summary. Write the piece, not the prompt. Suffer like the artist you are. It ain't easy, but if it were easy, it wouldn't be worth doing.
Yeah, I don't even, again, we're communicating very real things between and betwixt people. And I don't care to have the medium of exchange be some tech company with software written by some douche who I don't like, or, look, a guy gave me a really hard time. I come to a school event, my older kids, and I had a piece of tape on my chest. Guy goes, "What are you doing? What is that?" And I go, "I'm covering up the swoosh." It's a swoosh. Yeah, the Nike swoosh. I don't work for Nike. Why should they? He goes, "You like the shirt enough to buy it." I go, "Yeah, but I don't like the swoosh. I put the tape on it." He goes, "You're being ridiculous." And of course, this guy, what's his job? He's a VC guy. His brand is his life, He's like, "You like the shirt enough to buy it? Who cares whether people know I don't work for Nike? That was a failure but the cut of it and the fabric and the way it looks on me, I love, but I don't love their name. So I put tape on it." And he thought that it was the strangest, stupidest thing he had ever heard. We're just different. He and I.
Well, and I also want to, before we end, I want to explain the reference that Eugene just made to a drinking game. So we put clips up on social media. And for some reason, the last 3 shows, Eugene has mentioned punching someone in the face. And I think it's funny. So those are the clips that I'm picking. And I said, and somebody commented there, we get comments, right? And somebody commented about like questioning whether or not you actually punched people in the face. And other commenters and I jumped in cracking up. Like, I'm sorry, have you met Eugene? We have met him. We know. And this is not hyperbolic. But I said that we talk you talk so much about fighting, it should be a drinking game. You should be listening to the Bad Boss Brief. And every time Eugene talks about punching someone in the face or other justice meted out. So that was, and I want everyone in on the joke. That was the joke. You did work it in.
Right. And listen, all those people deserved what they got. So these were teachable moments.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much to those of you that sent in AI generated topics, ideas, questions. We will be getting to them in the next few weeks. Any more that you would like to send? WTF@badbossbrief.com. WTF@badbossbrief.com. I respond to every single one. Great to see you. See y'all in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Adios.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Bad Boss Brief with Eugene S. Robinson and Stephanie Payrollo. You can find Stephanie on Substack at spayrollo.substack.com. And you can find Eugene on Substack at eugenesrobinson.substack.com, as well as over on Instagram at Mr. Sleep 3. That's the number 3. If you've got a workplace question, situation, or story you'd like us to discuss, send it to me, Stephanie, at WTF@badbossbrief.com. Be sure to join us every other Wednesday at badbossbrief.substack.com for new episodes. Until next time, don't be an asshole at work. Thanks for listening.